In this section, we will be working with category. So for our restaurant's website, we will be adding category and we will be creating CRUD operations on that. So we'll create a category, edit a category, delete, as well as view details. So let's get started with working on category. In the last video, we completed the coding for this content management. In this video, the coding that we will do will be for the category. So if you click on category, it should redirect you to an index page of category list where you can add new categories. So right now, the first thing that we will focus is on this index page. Now the very first time you load this index page, there won't be any of the categories inside the database. So it will be an empty page. But there is something where we'll get started on. So let me switch back to our application and close this demo application. And then we'll go to Solution Explorer. Let me organize this. And the first thing we need to do is first we need to add a model. Like you know that there is category and we will be saving that category to a database. So whatever those category has, we should create a corresponding model in our project. And all the models we will create in the models folder. So here we'll right click, add. Model is basically a class file. So we'll add a class file and this we'll call it category. Now inside here, we need the properties. So basically the properties should resemble what will be there in the database. So in category, we need a category ID and we need the name of the category because category represents something like appetizer, dessert, main course, beverages, and so on. So we'll use a snippet to create properties, which is prop, and then you need to press tab twice. So if you press tab twice, it automatically creates a property. The first one will be an integer for ID of the category. And next one will be string, and this will be name of the category. Now we want to add some validations here, like name should be always there. It's a required property. So ASP.NET Core has done this in a really cool way. You just need in a square bracket required attribute. Now when you do this, you'll have to do a control dot to include data annotation namespace. So this means if from the front end it's passed an empty name, it will throw an error message that the model state is not valid. There are many more attributes which we can add here, like a display property, like if we want to display in something else. That is also a property which we'll take a look in the upcoming videos. But right now I think this looks good. We have ID, and ID we do not need to do a required because it will be a primary key and it will be always generated by the system. And then name, this looks good. Now here what you can do is you know that ID is primary key. So you can specify the key attribute here, or if you just don't specify it, if it's an ID, it will automatically be treated as a primary key. So for this one, let's make it a key and save it. Now we have created the model category, but we need to add this model to the database. So how do we do that? So whenever you have to add a new model to the database, you'll do that in the application DB context inside the data folder. So right here, you will say public DB set, and here we'll pass the object which is category. We'll have to do a control dot to include spice.models. And let me call this category so that it doesn't get confusing. And then we have a getter and setter. So now that you have added to the application DB context, if we run a migration, this will be added to the database. And let's see that. You'll go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and Package Manager Console. Now Package Manager Console you can open up using the shortcut Control PM. So right here, let me add a new migration. Now names of migration, you should always name them as meaningful as possible. Because in future, if you are taking a look at the migration, you want to see from the name that what was actually being done inside that migration. We know that in this case, we are adding a category to the model. So we can say add category to to database and press enter. You are adding a migration, it will automatically build your project. So if there are any errors, migration will not go through and it will give an error message that the build failed. So you will have to correct the errors and then add the migration again. So if you take a look at the migration, what it's doing here, it's creating a table called category and it's adding column ID and name. This looks good. Let's go back and update database. So when you write the command update database, it executes the migration to your database. Okay, it is executed. Let me switch to our SQL Server to make sure that it's updated. And right here, if we go to Spice, let's refresh tables, we should see a category table. And if we do a select top 1000, we'll see ID and name columns. Perfect, this looks great. So with this, we have added a new model to our project and we have pushed that model to our database. In the last video, we added the category model and we pushed that to our database. In this video, we will add a controller in which we'll start coding the action methods. And as you know, the first thing we should do is the index page. So we'll go to Solution Explorer and inside areas, we have to go inside admin. We'll right click and add a new controller. Let's go with the empty controller so that we know how to code it from the scratch. We'll add this and let me call this category controller. Now by default, if you add a new controller using scaffolding, it uses plural tense like categories, but I like to stick with the simple category. If you remember, when we moved the home controller inside an area, the first thing that we did was define an area on top of the class. Now this is not done by default by the Microsoft team, so we have to do that for all controllers that we add if they reside inside an area. And as you know, the category controller that we created is inside the admin area. So right here, you will say the area as admin. So with this controller is actually reachable now. Now we have the index action method here. But this index action method should be called from the underscore layout page. So how will it call this action method inside the category controller? Well, it is pretty simple. If you go to underscore layout inside views, and if we scroll down where we have the category, here we need to define what is the area, what is the controller, and what is the action method. So for that we have tag helpers, and the tag helpers we'll use is ASP action. The action name is the index action name. ASP controller. What controller is it inside? It is inside the category controller. And then we need to define the area. So ASP area, and this is admin area. So you can see how simple it is to use tag helpers. Tag helpers start with ASP. So this will denote that it is a tag helper. So here in this anchor tag, we have defined what index action, category controller, and that resides inside the admin area. So once you click on this link, it will call this action method right here. And what do we want to do on this action method? We want to retrieve everything that is inside the database for category and display all categories. So in controller, there will be the backend logic. So we'll retrieve them from the database and pass it to the view. So here, when it says return view, here we'll pass all the objects of category from the database. Now in classic days, what we used to do is we used to create the database object here, connection strings, and all of that just to get the object of database. But as you know before, that dependency injection is a core part of ASP.NET Core. So the best approach is to use dependency injection. So if we go to our Solution Explorer and if we go to the startup.cs class file, right here, you'll see in the services, we have added the application DB context with the connection string. So we can just retrieve this application DB context from our container. So how do we do that? Here we need to create a constructor. There is a snippet to create a constructor, which is CTOR, tab. And here, what we want to fetch from the container is an application DB context. We'll have to do a control dot. And let me call this underscore DB. Okay, let me call this DB here. And we need to create a private read-only application DB context underscore DB. So this will be our local object. And this is the object which we'll retrieve from our container using dependency injection. So what we'll do is we'll assign this underscore DB the value of the retrieved context, which is DB. So this way you can see how simple it is. We do not have to go to database to start a connection, and none of those coding is required there. Everything will be taken care by dependency injection container. We just need to retrieve that and use it like it's already there. So with this database object, what we want to do inside the index action method is we just want to retrieve everything from the category. So right here, where we have the return view, we'll directly return underscore DB dot category. So whenever it is added inside the application DB context class, right here, let me just show you. We have the category, so we can access that using db.category, and we want everything, so we'll just convert this to a list and return it to the view. Now ASP.NET Core team recommends that you should always use async and await. So here we'll make it async and we'll make it task of iActionResult, and then here we'll use the async method to list async. We'll have to do a control dot here, and we need to define await. Now we just had one functionality here, so this async and await was not much helpful, but in order to maintain the syntax convention in all the places, you should make all action methods as task of async. So with this we complete the get action method. So here you can just add a comment of get action method. And what it will do is it will retrieve everything from the database and pass it to the view. Now in order to display it into the view, we have to retrieve all of these objects in the view, iterate through them and display them. And we'll do that in the next video. In the last video, we added the action method for index inside the category controller. Now in this video, we will add the view to see what is being passed and display whatever we want on the index page. So let me switch back to our demo application and show you what exactly we'll be designing. So right now we'll be designing this view. We'll have a table here, we have a button here, and then we have a TR and TD combination to display these icons. But we'll do that one thing at a time. So let me switch back to our application. And the first question will be, how will we add a view? If we go to Solution Explorer, we know that controller, it's right here. So we need to add the view inside this views folder. But whenever you're adding a view, you need to make sure that all the views related to category controller should reside inside a folder called category. So anything except this controller should be the exact name of the folder. We can do that manually by right-clicking, add a new folder, and we can say category folder, and then add a view. The view name will be index. It will be an empty. We do not want to use any templates right now, but I'll show you what they are in future videos. This is not a partial view. We'll use the master page for this view as well. A partial view is something that we'll create very soon. This is something which you can treat as a user component which was there in classic ASP. Like some component which you want to use in multiple places in a website, you can just create a partial view and consume them in different views. For example, the create button that we have on the page, that will be used on multiple pages. So we can just move that inside a partial view, but we'll do that as we proceed. So right now, let me just add this. And with this, we have a view. It ends with CS HTML. Now the first thing which you should do whenever you're creating a view is you should think about what will be the model that will be passed from the controller to this view. So if we go to our controller, we see we are being passed a list of category. So we'll go here and define our model, which is at, and then you'll type model in small case, and this will be an IEnumerable of category. Because if you go, we have a list here, so we are retrieving an IEnumerable of category. This looks good. And let's run our application and just take a look at how things look so far. If we go to content management, and if you hover on category, on the bottom left hand side you can see that it is showing that it will go inside the admin area, category controller, and it is not showing us index because that is by default. So if we click here, great, you see the index that is being written here. So you can see how our routing is working. Now in the next video, let's start designing the actual table. We are back to our demo application, and in this video we'll start designing our category view. First thing first, you see that there is a nice background here. Now this background I want to apply it throughout the application and not just this page. So what we'll do is let me switch back to my project and finish that first. So right here we want to apply a background image. So in order to do that, we'll go to Solution Explorer, and all the static files will be inside the www root folder. So here, let me add a new folder for images, and this will hold all the images that we need for our project. If we right click and open this folder, we have an empty folder. Let me open a new folder and navigate. I have saved all of the images that we'll be using. So if we go to Spice Content, here is a list of all the images that we'll be using in this course, and this is the background that I want to use. So what we'll do is let me do a copy this and paste them inside our images folder. Let's close this. If you now open the images, you will see all of the images have been added here. Now I did one mistake here. Let me open the folder again. And these are the images for our products. So when we add the products in our website, at that time these images will be added, so we can remove them. And these are all the static images which we'll need. Now I will attach at the end of this course all of these 6 images, so you can add them inside the images folder as well. So now we can close this, and we have the 6 images here. And we need to tweak our CSS. So inside www.root, inside the site.css, we'll add few CSS at the bottom. So the first CSS I want is .search background. And here I just want to add a background, and this will be a URL. And we'll just pass the URL to our images. So we'll do /.css images, and we'll go to the dust scratchers. So this will set the background of the page with this image. So let's save this, and along with this I want to add few more CSS, because if we take a look at the demo application, you see we have a nice background of white here with the rounded borders and few padding. So let me just create that so we can use them in all of the views. So I'll say background white. And right here, I'll say the background color of white. And we'll add a padding of 30 pixels. And we'll add a border radius of 10 pixels to give it a nice rounded border. And we'll give it a margin bottom of 10, actually 30 pixels. I'll copy this and let me paste it 2 more times. I want to make some modifications here. So I'll do a border in which I'll just add a border of 1 pixel solid #DDD. Solid, that looks good. I'll copy this and I'll paste this in the last one. And here I just want a 10 pixel padding, because sometimes you do not want a padding of 30 pixels. So I'll call this border 10 padding. Okay, this looks good. I'll remove the padding from bottom. So with this, we've added 4 CSS classes in our site.css. Now we can just go here, and in order to add that, let me go to the underscore layout page, because we want that background on all the pages of the application. So what you do is underscore layout, we have the body tag, we can add a class here, which is search background. Let's save this and let me run the application. I'm not sure if this is visible, but actually the background has changed from white. If we go to our category page, there also it is a grayish background with some slash and lines here. So this looks really pretty. Now our main goal was to work with the index view and design this with the tables and content. But since this video has gotten quite longer, I'll do that in the next video. We are back to the demo applications, and since few videos we're trying to design this category page, but we have few other things to take care of. But in this video, let's design this category list. So let me switch back to my application and close this demo application. And right here, I'll remove this index and I'll start with some spacing and we'll add a div. Now with this div, we want a border and we also want the background white. That's the CSS class that we added. And here we'll add a div, give it a class of row to use the Bootstrap grid system. And we'll use a div class of column 6. And here we'll just display the category list. We'll give it a class of text info to give it a bluish color. And we'll call this category list. So column 6 will take up half of the size. And then we have another class, we'll give it a column 6. And we'll also say text right. This will pull all the content on the right. And here we'll just say create button for now, but that's what we have to create. So with this, the first row is done. Let's run this application and see how things look like. We'll go to the content management category. Great. We see category list, we have a white background, and now you can see the actual background in effect. And we have a create button that we need to add here. Before we work on that button, let me create a table and display all of the categories from the database. Right now it will be empty, but let's just code that. So let me switch back. And right here, we'll add a line, and then we'll add a div. And inside this div, we'll create a table. Now we'll add some Bootstrap classes. So class, we'll say table, table stripe, and we'll give it a border. So heading will be inside the tr. We'll have the th tag. And here the first thing we want to display is name. So we'll use the HTML helper, html.display_name for m goes to m.name. Now one thing to notice here is the display name for HTML helper. We do not have a corresponding tag helper for this. So you can just continue to use a combination of both tag helpers and HTML helpers. With the display name for, if you have any attributes inside the category, so if we go here and if we go to our models category, if you had a display attribute, it will automatically be reflected if you use this HTML helper. So this is the helper that I usually use in the tables. Now inside the tr, I want to give it a class of table secondary, and then we'll add a couple of empty th tags. So with this, the table row is done. Now what we need to do is, you know that we have retrieved this list of category. So we need to iterate through that list and display all the category names. So for that, right here, we'll use a for each loop and we'll say variable item in model. So for all of the values inside the model, it will iterate through them and we can access it using this item. So for all of them, we want to create a new row. So we'll use tr and we want to display in a td at html.displayFor, and we'll say m goes to item.name. So we will display the name here, and after that inside a TD we will display edit delete details. So these are the buttons with icons which we'll be designing as we proceed, but I just want to see how things look like with this details. Now what if there are no items in this model? There are no categories. In that case, I just want to display no category exists. So here you can check at if, and you can say model.count, and if this is greater than 0, then proceed with the table, and if this is not, oops, we need a bracket, there we go, and if this is not greater than 0, I need to close this. Then outside here we'll have else, and we can just display in a paragraph no category exists. Let's save this, let's go back and refresh this page, and it should display no category exists. There we go, this looks perfect. Now in the next video, let me create the button to create a new category. In this video, we will be creating this button. Now you can see that we have a nice plus icon here, and also on the smaller buttons we have few good icons. Now in Bootstrap 3, we had the support for glyph icons which was inbuilt inside the Bootstrap, but with that there were lots of issues. So the Bootstrap team decided to take them out. But no need to worry, we have lots of other workarounds. And one of them is Font Awesome. So let me switch to Google Chrome to see how we can get such icons. We'll go to the fontawesome.com, and you can use many of these icons for free. If you want to use more icons, there are pro versions, but there are lots of free icons which you can just use. So in order to do that, you'll copy this link, and we need to include this in our project. So if we go to our project, right here, we'll go to the underscore layout, and we have the CSS on top. So here what you can do is just paste that, and you'll also paste that if the environment is not development. So that's the only thing that you had to do to include Font Awesome. Now for production, what you can do is, rather than using the Font Awesome's website, you can download the CSS and use it right here. But I think using HTTPS Font Awesome directly like this works for now. Then let's go to our index view, and right here where we have the create button, let me add an action link using anchor tag. So I'll say ASP action. Now once you click this action link, it should take you to the create action method. So we'll write create here. We have not coded that yet, but bear with me, we'll do that one thing at a time. We'll add some Bootstrap classes, btn info, and then we want to display create new. Let me save this and run our application first. Okay, if we go to content management category, great, we see the button. Now what we need is the plus sign here. So if we go to our Google with the Font Awesome, and let's search for plus icon, you see that is the plus icon that we have, and right here is what you have to use. So you can just copy this, go back to your project, and before this text, paste that, and I just want to add a spacing. Let's save this, let's go back and refresh. And great, you see how easy it was to integrate the Font Awesome icons. Now this create new, I will be using that in many views. So it's best just to create a partial view so that you can just call it by that and it will automatically generate this button for you. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me stop the application. What we can do is we can add this inside a paragraph with this anchor tag. So let me cut this. Let me go to Solution Explorer, and all the partial view should start with an underscore, and we'll place them inside the shared folder. So we'll add a view, and this will be a partial view, and we'll call this underscore create button partial. This will be an empty. Let's add this. Now we don't need any model here, so we can remove, and inside a paragraph, let me paste the thing that we copied for the button. So we save this inside a partial view. Next time when we have to consume this right here, we can just use the partial tag helper, and we have the name which is equal to underscore create button partial. Let's save this and let's run our application. This should behave exactly same as it was before. We just moved our code into a partial view. So next time we have to use this, we'll just use the partial view. There you go. You can see only one line is needed there, and you have the complete button. So this looks great. Now we have still few things that we need to fix inside our index, like this edit, delete, and details, but we'll do that in the upcoming videos. For the next videos, let's work on the create new category action. In this video, we will be adding this create view, and we will be adding the action method for the create controller of the category. So let me switch back to our application. And right here, we have the category controller. So here we need to add a controller action method for create. So that will be public. Now I know I said that we should use async and task every time, but here we'll just use the iAction result and create. And the reason is because we won't be passing anything to the view here. It will be an empty view. Because if we go back to our application, the demo application, you can see here we do not need to fill any values or pass anything to the view here. In the index, we had to pass the list, but in create, we do not have anything. So when we don't have to retrieve anything, we do not need the async or await. It will just be an empty action method. Here, we'll just say get for create. Let's save this. And now we need to add the view for the create action method. So we can go to the folder. Inside the category, we can right click, add a view, or we can right click on create here and add a view. Create, it will be an empty, it won't be partial view. Let's add this. Now this automatically adds the view to the correct folder. If you take a look here, it will add the view create inside the category folder as expected. Now let's run our application and see if we can view this create text. So right here, we go to category, create new. Perfect, we have this create text. In the next video, let's work to add the fields here so that we can enter the category name. Let me close this, and I want to show you that right now, if you go here, it shows the web browser as Microsoft Edge. I want to change this to Google Chrome. So we'll do that, and next time when we execute this, it will be opened up in Google Chrome. In this video, we will be working on the create view. So first thing first, we have to define the model. What we'll be using in this model is again category. Now this time it will just be one category and not a list of category. This looks good. Let me close this, and we'll add some linings, and we'll add the heading here. So h2, and we'll give it a class of text info, and what we want to say here is create category. Now here, since we will be posting stuff, we need a form so that when we hit the create button, it uses a post method to push the data, and then we can save that to the database. So for that, we'll add a form here, and the method should be post, and we'll use the tag helper ASP action. It should post to the create action. Now within this form, we need div. We'll give it a class of border and we'll give it a background white, the custom CSS that we added. Now with ASP.NET Core, we have a div and we have ASP validation summary. This will make it model only and class will be text danger to give a red color. What this will do is, let's say that you have a required property, and if user doesn't fill that and hits the create button, in this ASP validation summary, we will display them the error message that this is required. So after that, we'll add a div here. We'll give it a class of form group and we'll make it a row. And within here, we will be adding labels and the input text box. So we'll add a div class of column2 for the text and we'll add the label here. So we'll say label ASP4 tag helper. This will be for name and this name is retrieved from this category. And we'll give it a class of column form label. So this looks good. Then we'll add a div, we'll give it a class of column5 and here we'll have the text box. So we'll do input. Again, we'll use the tag helper ASP4. This is again for name and we'll use the class of form control. And after this, we need a span and here we'll do the ASP validation for. Now here we need to define that we need to validate this. So we'll say name here and we'll give it class of text danger. So what will happen is any error related to this name will be displayed in the span here. Outside of this div, we'll add another div, give it a class of form group and row. And we'll give it a div of class column5 offset of 2. Now the reason I gave it offset is because I do not want those buttons right below this label. I want them besides the input tag here. So we'll add the same alignment here. And what do we want to do here? We'll do a div class of row and inside here we'll give it a div class of column6 and let me copy this and paste it again. So we'll do input type is equal to submit and we'll give it classes of btn, btn info and form control. We'll also give it a value of create. This looks good for the input button and then we need a link to go back to the index page. So we'll use the action and here we'll give index action and we'll give it classes btn, btn success and form control. What we want to display here is back to list. Let me save this and run our application. Now right now, if you hit the submit button, nothing will happen because in the controller, we have not added any action method for the post. But if we go to the create new, great, we see name here and we see a nice text box and everything looks good. Now this create and back to list, I'll be using them repeatedly in other views as well. So let's create a partial view for them in the next video. Now here, since we know that create and back to list, we'll be using them in many other views. So let's add them to a partial view. So let me close my application here. We'll go to Solution Explorer. We'll go to the shared, right click, add a view. This will be a partial view. And let me call this underscore create and back to list button. Let's create this. Let's go back to our create and let me cut the row and paste it right here. We'll close this and here we'll call partial name underscore create and back to list button. Let's save it and let's run our application. I have a capital A here. Let me just edit that, save it, and go back. Great, everything looks good. So with this, we have completed the view. Now in the next video, let's go ahead and work with the post action method for category. So once you hit some category here, like plugin, and hit create, it should push the entry to the database. So let's see how we can do that in the next video. In the last video, we completed the view for create, and now we need to work on the post action method. So inside the categories controller, let me add a comment for post create. And here, whenever we are creating any of the action method for post, we need to let it know that it's a HTTP post action method. And after that, the next thing that you should keep in mind is all of the post action method must include the validate anti-forgery token. We have discussed this in the attacks we discussed in the beginning of the course. And now let's create the action method. So it will be public async task of I action result. And here, let's call this create, and we'll fetch a category. We'll do a control dot here, and let's call this category. So when we post, if we take a look right here, what will happen is on the method post, it will pass us the name that has been retrieved inside the form. So right here, inside the category, we'll retrieve that name. And what we need to do is first we need to check if the model state is valid. So what this will do is that it will validate it on the server side. So we have retrieved the category. Now let's say that user entered an empty name and it was not caught inside the view if we did not have validation, and it comes here, and here it will validate. If it finds that the name is empty, it won't go inside because it says model is invalid. So if it's not valid, we'll return back to the view and we'll pass the category object. So if it's invalid, it will return back to the view. Now if it is valid, if everything is valid, we will add that to the database using _db add method, and we will pass the category. Now here you can also say db.category.add, and you'll have to do an await _db.save changes asynchronously. So when you save the changes, you can use the await method, and once this is successful, you want to return back to the index view. Now when you're returning back to any views, you'll actually return to an action method which will then call the view. So here we'll say redirect to action, and we can say index here. Now there are many chances of spelling mistake here, so because of that, ASP.NET Core has a name of method, and here you can just type index. So here you cannot find anything invalid because this is validated with the index right here. So there is less chances of any spelling mistake. So with this, we complete the post action method. Now let's run our application and try to create our first category. While we are creating this, let me switch back and I'll put a debugger right here. Now let's go back, category, create new. I will add appetizer, and let's hit the create button. The debugger comes here. If we go on this category, it will display the current value. ID is 0, we don't care about that, but the name you can see appetizer is here. We can just hit the continue and it will create the category. Great, we can see in the list we have the appetizer that is retrieved from the database. So this looks great, and then you can see the edit, delete and details. So this is not fancy. I will change this in the next video. Here we are again in our demo application, and this time we'll be working with these 3 buttons in our table list. Because these 3 buttons will be using across multiple views here, I want to create them as a partial view. So we'll just have a partial view with a TD tag in which within a div we'll have 3 anchor tags and we'll use the font awesome icons. But what will happen is when you click the edit, if you take a look at the bottom on the left hand side, it displays the ID along with the edit page, details or the delete page. So in this partial view, we need to pass an integer parameter which we have to append here or pass it as a route ID. So how will we do that? Let's go back to our project, and right here in the Solution Explorer, we'll go to the shared folder, right click, add a new view, partial view, and let's call this table button partial. Here in the model, we know we will be passing only an integer. So we'll just say model will be an integer which will be the ID. After this, we need a TD tag, and you can see the IntelliSense is not working here. So in that case, let me close this, save it, close it and open it again. And it should work. So if I type TD, there we go. This is a minor bug, but Visual Studio team will fix that very soon. And here I want to give it a style and I want to give it a width of 150 pixels. So within here, we'll add a div, we'll give it a class of btn group, and we'll give it a role of group. Now here we need 3 anchor tags. So let me create the first one with a class of btn primary, and we'll give it text of white. And which action method it should go to? Let's first do the edit one. Now in all of them, you know that we have to pass an ID, which will be an integer that will retrieve here. So how we can pass that? We have the tag helper, which is ASP route. After ASP route, whatever you name it, that will be the exact name that will be passed. So we want to pass ID, so let's call that. And what should be passed here? This will be add model. So whatever integer we get here, we'll pass it as a route ID. So this looks good, but then we need a font awesome icon. So let me switch back. And in the icons here, we can search for edit. Okay, this looks good. Let me copy this, go back and paste it right here. Save it. Let me paste it 2 more times because we need the same for details and delete. So then we will have details, we will have delete, and we'll just change the color to success, and for delete, a red icon looks good. Let's go back to the font awesome, and here we'll search for a list. And this looks good. Let me copy this, go back, and we'll paste it right here. And for the last one, if we go back, we'll search for a trash icon for delete. And we'll copy this and paste it. So this looks good for the partial view that we have. Let's consume this. We'll go to Solution Explorer. Inside Customer, we have the views. Whoops, it will be admin. And the index view, we have the edit, delete, and details. Here, we'll use the tag helper partial. And we'll use the name underscore table button partial. And we need to pass an ID. So we have a parameter model, and here we'll pass item.id because that will correspond to the category ID. Let's run our application. And if we go to content management category right here, great. We see the category is aligned as we wanted. So perfect. This looks good, and we have created our partial view for the icons in the table. In the next video, let's work on the edit action method for category. So right now we are in the categories controller, And here we have the index as well as the create action methods. Now we want to create the action method for edit. In edit, we will have both get as well as post action methods. One thing to notice about get edit is that when you will be calling the edit, you will be passing the ID of the category that you want to edit, and based on that you have to retrieve that and pass it to the view. So let's create the action method for edit get. Here first we'll say get, and this is for edit. Now for get action methods, you do not need any annotations like validate anti-forgery token or HTTP post. So you'll just say public async task of I action result and the name of the action method, which is edit. And here in the parameters, you'll receive an ID because this will be ID of the category which needs to be edited. So first thing, we'll check if ID is empty or is null, then we will return not found. If ID is not null, then we will retrieve the category from database using await underscore db dot category dot find async, and we'll pass the ID. So based on the ID, find async will retrieve the category inside the category variable right here. And here it will be find async, not the first async. There we go. So based on this, it will find the category from the database where ID matches what we are passing right there. Then we will check if category is null. That means we did not find any record, and we'll say return not found. If this is not the case, we'll return to the view. And what we want to return is the category that we retrieved, because we will be displaying this category name to the user so they can edit it if they want. So this looks good for the get action method for edit. Now in the next video, let's create the view for edit. Now that we have the get action method for edit, let's create the view. So we'll right click on the action, add view, edit. It won't be a partial view. And this time, let me use the template so we can see what it looks like. So here we'll select the edit template, and we can select a model class, which is category. So based on this category, it will create the model template, and let's hit the add button. So this will scaffold the template or the view for edit. Let's run our application to see how things look like. Obviously, we will be going back and editing the template, but I just want to show you how things look like here. So if we hit on edit, great, we have ID and name. And I think if you do too, this won't do anything because we do not have the post action method. So you can see using the template, it will display all the properties that you have and the save and back to list button. Let's keep this running and modify whatever we have in the template because we do not want it like this. First, we do not want any ID to be displayed to the end user to edit. And then I want the template more to look like the create so that it will match with the consistency in our application. So what we can do, let me just delete it altogether. I just wanted to show you how things look like. The model looks good. Let's go to our create. And let me copy whatever we have here and paste it inside edit. Let's change this to edit category. And the ASP action will be the edit action where we'll be posting the form. Now in edit, we need validations. So we'll leave everything that we have here. And in the offset to here, we have the create and back to list, but we would have to add another partial view, which will be edit button and back to list button. So before we do that, let me just make that change right here. So we'll write the code here and then we'll just create a partial view for that. So here we will have a div class of row, and we'll have a div class of column 6. And the first one will have the submit button. So input type is submit, and we'll have the classes btn, btn info, and we have the form control. And then we will add a ASP route ID, and here we will be passing the ID, so we can say at model.id, and then the value, it will be update. So this looks good for the edit button. Then we have a div, we'll give it a class of column6, and inside this we'll have an action link. So ASP action, it should redirect to the index action, and the classes will have btn, btn success, and form control. And what we want to display here is back to list. Let's save this and let's run our application. So if we hit the edit button now, it will pre-fill the category name appetizer. Great, we see the name has been pre-filled here and everything looks good. The back to list will be working, but the post does not work right now because we need to create this. So let's work on that in the next video. In this video, before we work on the update post or the edit post action method, let's move both of these buttons to a partial view. So let me stop the application here. We'll go to Solution Explorer. If we go to Shared, we'll right click, add a view, and let's call this Edit and Back to List button. This will be a partial view, so this looks good. Let's add this. We'll go back to the edit view that we have open. We'll cut everything right here and paste it. Now here we had model.id, so we need to define a model and it will be an integer. And then do not forget, here we should only pass model because that's what we have right here. Let's save this. Let's go back to the edit, and right here we'll be calling that partial. So here we will have partial name, and this will be underscore edit and back to list button, and we need to pass model, which will be model.id. So this looks good. Let's save this and let's run our application. If we go to category and edit, great, we have the update and back to list as expected. So with this, we complete the partial button for update and back to list. In the next video, let's work on the post action method for the edit controller. In the last video, we completed the edit get view and we added the partial view for the buttons. In this video, we will work on creating the post action method for edit so that when a user clicks on the button to update it, it updates the category in the database. So what we did for create for the post action method was we have to define that this is a HTTP post and we need the validate anti-forgery token. These two are a must if any action method is a post. After that, we'll create it. So we'll say public async task of I action result, and here we'll say edit. Now whenever we are posting anything right here, we will get a category object from the form. So we'll retrieve that object, and based on that, the first thing we should check is if model state is valid. So what we did in model state, as I discussed before, is it will check if there are any requirements on any properties of this model. If there are, and if they are successful, it will go inside. And here we just want to use the database and update category. Now updating category or updating any object can be done in multiple ways. So this is one way. Here we are just passing the category object that is being passed to us from the form. So here we'll have the ID and the updated category name. So what this update method will do is it will look up for the category based on the ID because that is a primary key, and it will update all of the other properties. Right now we only have name. So that's why this is not an inefficient call. But let's say if we had hundreds of properties and we only want to update 1 or 2 properties, there are other efficient ways to do that, and we'll discuss them as we proceed with the course. So here it will update it, and after that we'll use await and we'll save the changes asynchronously. Once the changes have been saved, we will return redirect to action, and we want to redirect user back to the index action. So we can use the name of, and here we'll define the index action. Now what to do if model state is not valid? So outside if it is not valid, we'll return back to the view and we'll pass the category object so that it is filled automatically. Now let's run the application and see this in action. Right here, we'll go to Content Management, Category, and we'll edit the appetizer. And let's call this appetizer 1 and hit the update button. Great, you can see it has been updated in the database and it retrieves the new value here. Now I want to show you one more thing here. If we go on edit, and you know that we have a property validation that it should not be empty. So if we hit update button, it displays that the name field is required. Now let me do one thing. Let me switch back to our application while this is running. And here let me open the view. So for that, we'll go inside areas, controllers, category, and we'll select the edit view. And here, you know, we have this validation. So let me remove this validation for 1 second. I'll bring it back, but I just want to show you to debug few things. In category controller, I'll put the debugger. Let's go back. And now let's refresh this page. Continue. The controller will go back because we are refreshing. In the category, you'll see the name is empty because we removed that, and the ID is 1. So here, if we do F10, you can see the model state is not valid. And why is it not valid? If you go on the model state and go right here, here you can debug everything. So if you go to values and you go to result view, you can see that the ID is valid, but the name is invalid. Now this name is invalid because it is a required property and what we have passed is null. So that's why it says that it is invalid and it goes back to the view. So if I press F5 now, it will come back here and this field will be gone. There you go, but it does not display any error message. So here you can see how the model state works if we did not have any front-end validation. Now let me go back. And here what we'll do is we'll go to our view, we'll bring back the front-end validations that we had, and we'll remove the debugger. So with this you can see how the front-end validation works and how model state works. Now in the next video, let's work on the delete view and the delete action method. We are back to our demo application, and in the last video we completed the edit functionality. In this video, let's work on the delete functionality. So once a user clicks on this delete button, it is redirected first to the delete get action method, where it retrieves the property that needs to be deleted based on the ID and displays it to the user. So first, let's work on the delete get action method. So if we switch back to our application, right here, the delete get action method is retrieving everything that we did for the edit, because in edit also we have to display the property details so that user can edit them. But the only thing different in delete is that we do not need to update it, so it will be a read-only field. Other than that, the view will also be the same. So first thing we can do is we can copy this edit get action method, and we'll scroll down, and right here we'll make some space, paste it, and we'll change this from edit to delete. We'll also change the action name to delete, and here we'll retrieve the ID, and based on ID we'll retrieve the category and pass it to the view. So this is exactly what we want for the delete. In most of the cases when we have edit and delete, the get action method and the views will be almost the same, because we'll be displaying the same properties on the page load, but only when the user clicks in edit, we update them, but in delete, we remove them from the database. So this is all we had to do for the get action method for delete. And in the next video, let's create the delete view. Here we are back to our demo application, and in this video, we'll be creating the delete category view and the partial buttons view. So let me switch back to our application. And the quickest way to create the view here is right click and add view. So it will add the view in the corresponding folder. We'll create the empty template and it won't be a partial view. Let's add this. And now we know that the delete view will be exactly similar to the edit view that we have. So we can go here and copy everything. Let's go to delete, and right here I'll just paste this. What I'll do is I'll cut this and move it here. Okay, so we have the model at the top, which is category. The action here, we'll have to change this to delete, and we'll change the heading to delete category. Other than that, everything looks good. We do not need any validations because we are not updating anything at all. And then we need to create a partial view to push it to the delete action method and to go back to the view. So here we'll call this partial view delete and back to list button. Let me copy this name. We'll go to the Solution Explorer, and inside the shared folder we'll right click, add, we'll add the view. It will be a partial view, and we'll paste the name here. Let's add this. Now here this view will be similar to the edit button that we have. So what we can do is we can go to edit, we can copy this and go here and paste it. We'll need an integer here, so we'll say at model int, and we need to pass the ID. The value here we want to display is delete, and for delete we want the color of danger. Everything else looks good because we want to go back to the list, which will be the index action method. And then let's go back to the delete view, and here we're passing the ID to the partial view. So this looks good. Let's run our application and see how everything looks like. Okay, if we go to content management, we go to category and we go to the delete. Now here we did not add the read only property, so that's why it is editable. So let's go back, and inside the delete right here we'll just say read only, save it and refresh. And great, you can see the field is read only now. So this looks great. But now I just want to make one change, that here rather than displaying name, I want to display category name. So how do we do that? Let's go back to the application. Let me close the project here. And this we have to apply to our model. So if we go to Solution Explorer, Models, Category, with the required property, let's also add display. And here we'll say name is equal to category name. Let's save this and let's run our application. And here if we go to category and we go to the delete, perfect, you see the name has been updated to category name. So this ASP.NET Core is smart enough to do it automatically once we apply that to the model level attributes. So this looks great. So with this we complete the delete get as well as the delete view. Now in the next video, let's complete the delete post action method and make sure that we delete the category to see everything works. In this video, we will be creating the delete post action method. So let me close our application that we have running. And what we will do is we'll add a delete post action method. So for that, the first thing we have is HTTP post and validate anti-forgery token. Then we'll have public async task of I action result, and let's call this delete and here it will be an integer of ID. Now you might be thinking where we'll be getting this integer from. So if we take a look at our partial button that we have here inside delete, we are passing a route ID and we're passing the model which is integer that we retrieve from here. So here we are passing model.id, which is the category ID. It will be passed to this partial view, and inside the ASP route ID, it will be passed to our controller right here. Now with action names, we have few rules. One of the rules is that we cannot have the exact same definitions. So here the names are delete and the parameters are also the same. We cannot have this. So for that, we have to name this something else like delete confirmed. And since we changed it from the key verbs like delete and get, what we have to do is right here, we can define the action name. So here we'll say this action is actually a delete action, but we just had to rename it because the signatures were same in both delete get and post. So that way ASP.NET Core will understand that this is a delete action method. Then what we have to do in delete is based on this ID, we'll retrieve the category from the database. So we'll say await _db.category.find asynchronous, and based on the ID, find that category and store that in this variable. Once we have that, let's remove it. So _db.category.remove, and here we'll remove the category. Once we remove the category, we'll do await _db.save changes asynchronously. And once the changes have saved, we will return redirect to action, and here we'll redirect to the name of index action. So this looks good, but after we retrieve category, we can check if the category exists. So if category is equal to null, we can return not found. Whoops, not found. There we go. So if category is null, we can return not found, or we can return back to the view just like that. And if the category is found, we'll delete it and redirect to our index action method. Now here I just want to show you with the delete confirmed. Right now, if we remove this confirmed, it will not show us an error message and we can keep this. And that is because here integer is a nullable field and here it's not. But let's say what if it was a nullable field as well? You can see in that case we are getting an error message that category controller already defines a member called delete with the same parameter types. So here if you do not make this nullable and keep this as delete, you do not need this action name. But if you make this nullable, then you definitely need this action name and you have to rename this to something else like delete confirmed. Let's run our application and see that delete actually works. If you go to content management, category, let's delete the category that we have. And great, we see no category exists anymore. So with this, we have completed the delete as well as the edit and create for category list. Let me create few categories here and then I will show you what you have to do for your very first assignment. Now that we have worked with our category create, category edit and category delete, it's time for assignment. For your very first assignment, I want you to create category details view as well as the action method by yourself. All you have to do is based on the ID, you have to retrieve the category from the database and pass it to the view. And inside view, you need to display the category name and you will have the buttons for edit and back to list. For those buttons, you will add a partial view and you'll call it details and back to list button. This partial view will look similar to what you have for the other partial views for the button that we created. As a hint here, with the edit button, you have to redirect to the edit page. So for that, you will have to pass the ID of the category. Let me switch to the demo application, which is a completed project, and I will show you how it looks like. Inside the category list, you can see we have the details. So if you click here, we have the category name, which is not editable. We have the back to list, which takes us back to the index. And if you go back and hit on the edit button, it brings us to the edit category page where user can edit the category. So this is your very first assignment. Now, if you are ever stuck or if you need help, you can always check my GitHub code. But I want you to try this because everything that you'll need here, we have already implemented that in the previous videos. Let me switch to GitHub. So if you are ever stuck, I will show you how you can debug the application or check what are the next step needed. So if you go on GitHub, I have already pasted the code for assignment 1, which is category details. If you go on here, you will see what is everything that has to be added, and you can do that automatically. If you add whatever is displayed here, everything will work as expected. But I do not want you to take this shortcut. I want you to implement all of the assignment by yourself, and if you are not able to figure it out, only then go to my GitHub code. So let's get started with the assignment.